Blog Talk Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and I can't start today's show without talking about the ISO 10002. You know, some people just love to complain, but companies have a responsibility to care. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has revised ISO 10002, the standard for complaint handling. This document enables organizations to foster a customer-focused environment open to feedback, heightening their customer satisfaction. You can get the ISO 10002 standard from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, the U.S. member body of ISO. Visit ANSI.org/complain to learn more. That's ANSI.org/complain to learn more.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. We're meeting with Tom O'Keefe, managing director of Southern Classic Chicken. And Southern Classic Chicken, who offers home-style fried chicken, utilizes a drive-thru or walk-up model in each location, which has poised the concept for continued expansion throughout this pandemic and beyond. I'm going to talk to Tom about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach. Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system. Coach. Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed. Consult. Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track. And advise. Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032. That's franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the Franchipreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Tom O'Keefe, the managing director of Southern Classic Chicken. And Southern Classic Chicken, who offers home-style fried chicken, utilizes a drive-thru or walk-up model in each location, which is poised the concept for continued expansion throughout the pandemic and even beyond. Hi, Tom. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Marty. I appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to talk with you this morning. And anytime I have the chance to speak about Southern Classic Chicken and its story, I'm very happy to do so.
This is going to be my pleasure, Tom. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from this morning, Tom?
I'm calling from Metairie, Louisiana, just outside New Orleans.
Oh, okay, fantastic. And it's interesting. By the way, congratulations. I saw you an article on you, Tom, in the Franchise Times, by the way, which of course is my favorite magazine, and I thought that was fantastic that you were in there. And then I learned, Southern Classic Chicken, has a pretty long history, doesn't it? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, because it's a question that I frequently get when I do get interviewed, and I did appreciate, Franchise Times giving us that attention. It was terrific. Yeah. But I commonly am asked, why would a new company start franchising them? And my immediate reaction is, well, this company's new to franchising, but they're not new to the industry. Right. This is a 30-plus-year-old brand, and it's been out there, and it's been just kind of like that little train that could. And now we're at the point where, for many reasons, which I'm sure we'll discuss, the timing felt right, to put together and launch the franchise program. But in terms of the operating history of this brand, it's absolutely tremendous. And in fact, I'll get questioned about why take on competitor A or competitor B. Right. I'll kind of laugh and say, well, guess what? Southern Classic has been in business longer than competitor A or competitor B.
That's true, right? That's fantastic, Tom. Yeah, no, it is great, right? Because as you said, it's probably a common question. As you think of some of the big ones that are out there, Tom. How does Southern Classic Chicken then? Typically, because I know you're asked the question all the time. How do you differentiate yourself then from some of those others? The player A and player B that are out there in your particular industry.
I think that probably goes back to the roots of the concept. Yeah. It started out, it's basically, initially was maybe like a small town player, if you will. Right. And didn't really go onto the bigger stage. To some degree that's still true, but obviously in Northwest Louisiana, Shreveport area, it's dominant, and that's a bigger stage than, maybe some of the initial locations. But that also gives us the confidence that we can take this and scale it because of the direct competitors and results that they've gotten against those direct competitors in the Northwest Louisiana market. When I actually went up there and I visited it, I was really amazed by. I've called it. It's like a cult-like following to the point where they've never done advertising or marketing. They open a new location. They do no marketing, no advertising. They just build it, and the name and the brand recognition is there, and it's a draw. And I really think that the point of differentiation is obviously, the taste profile. You got a product that has lasted, has survived, admirably a 30-year commercial test of time, and is still putting out the numbers that it does. So clearly, the product works. I think also the second part of that is the price to value relationship, because by starting out and kind of dominating these smaller markets, the economics are such that they can keep their pricing below most competitors, and certainly competitors that are national players. And I think that advantage will still, we can leverage that advantage even as we grow this thing and take it to bigger markets because of that aspect of the model.
It seems like, too, with the model, Tom, when I was researching it, was the walk-up model, was it always there, or was that something new, or is it something that you've always had implemented with Southern Classic Chicken?
No, it's been there. It's been there for most, if not all, of the history. There are some dining restaurants, although they are in the minority. This was, it's a drive-through walk-up model, but most of the stores currently, but going forward, the franchise prototype, that will only be the drive-through walk-up model. We're not going to have the dine-in. And actually, to be honest, that was a decision that was made even pre-COVID.
That's clever, isn't it? What was interesting, I remember reading in the article, Tom, that the brand saw a 20% increase in system-wide sales last year when the demand for off-premise dining increased nationwide, and now it's starting to become, of course, as you know, the standard practice in the fast food industry, you know, and that's amazing. The theme of the show kind of last year was, you know, as you can imagine, was COVID. You know, a lot of franchises, sure, they did have to pivot. You know what I mean? They said, okay, we weren't ready for this, so we had to do something. But it seems to me, you know, your model was already set up for this, you know, whether it was COVID or not. So, I mean, how did the pandemic, I hate to say it played a positive role in your business, but the business certainly wasn't hurt, was it?
No, and I think maybe I would phrase it just slightly differently.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that maybe, you know, the pandemic was, quote, good. I think, if anything, it just validated that model directionally was right, because it proved that, just like you want to try to find models that are recession-proof, you know, maybe this is pandemic-proof, if that's a phrase. Right, but
exactly.
It just showed us that, you know, we were on the right path prior, and to your point, unlike a lot of other concepts that they had to stop, go back to the drawing board, create a new prototype or a new model within their existing prototype, you know, to respond to a pandemic or what they think what the reimagined landscape is going to be. We were ahead of that. And then, like I said, the results that we saw during it validated the decision on the prototype.
Right, of course. And it seems like the menu too is streamlined for the most part, isn't it, Tom? You know, I mean, compared to, you know, other players that are out there. You know, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because I think that's very clever, particularly when we're talking about franchising.
There's no question that there's a couple ways that you can go as a franchisor in the food space. Mm-hmm. The attitude here was, you know, let's keep it simple. Let's excel at what we do. You know, the bone-in chicken, even to the point where, you know, resisting pressure to add a chicken sandwich because everyone else has a chicken sandwich. Right. Not to say that, you know, down the road that might fit, but it would have to fit for a reason other than, you know, everyone else is doing it. And so, you know, sticking to what they know, what they do best and have done best for 30 years, just keep doing that. Of course. Also, you know, when you want to scale, that's also a consideration, because now you got to replicate the model and you got to put it in the hands of new operators. And so, you know, the easier and less complicated you can make that, I think the better chance of success. And so that's been and I think that's also a very good example about the discipline of the Fanning family and how they have conducted the business and operated. And I think they've been very wise to stay true to their guiding principle, which is, you know, we are a 1,500 square foot drive-through, walk-up, bone-in fried chicken, southern restaurant with terrific chicken and terrific sides. And you're certainly part of a big industry, aren't you, Tom? I don't know what the numbers are in your particular industry. I imagine it's got to be in the billions, though, right? I mean, it's up there, isn't it? Sure. It's a big industry, and it seems like it's growing too. You know, which is fantastic, of course, as the markets get bigger here in the United States. You know, so I think that's terrific. What's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you, Tom, since being part of the organization? I imagine you have hundreds of stories, but I imagine that the franchising has been an interesting part of it. But anything else kind of stand out? And I think I've mentioned this in other interviews, but it bears repeating. Yeah. And to me, what has been, I'll call it really refreshing to be associated with this brand because of the Fanning family. And just the way they are, who they are just humble, every one of them. They're hard-working guys. They're in their restaurants every day. They only want to do it the right way. They know what they know. They are not afraid of what they don't know, because they're willing to listen to advice, invest in that advice if it means enhancing the system in a way that we as the franchise professionals think we know what we see and where we know we can take it. they've built a great company. They've built a great model. They have tremendous following. They invest in their communities. They're just, as a lawyer representing them, they couldn't be a more model client.
Wow. There's something nice about being part of a family organization, isn't there, Tom? I mean, and your franchisees, to some extent, I guess when they become franchisees, they get to be part of that family to some extent, don't they?
They do. And that's why we've been very selective in terms of, the vetting process of franchisee prospects. We've turned away, more groups. We haven't signed a deal yet. We're close on a couple,
right?
But again, we're not going to yield. We have our preferred candidate profile. We want to again make sure that the first one or two have to be just grand slams, not just home runs.
Right.
And they have the patience to not just
That's important too, isn't it, Tom? Right, it's to be patient, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's they're out there. And speaking of that, Tom, I mean, so what does Southern Classic Chicken look for, or what are they looking for in their new franchisees? I mean, as you mentioned, it seems like there's some specific characteristics or traits that would make a great Southern Classic Chicken franchisee. What would some of those traits or characteristics be?
Yeah, I think they fall into a couple of buckets. I mean, obviously, they have to be well capitalized.
Right.
But I think that you're going to find more often than not, there's plenty of people, unfortunately, that will meet that criteria. But it certainly is a criteria. I think more importantly, though, food service operating experience is critical. We even would prefer multi-unit food service experience. I think an ideal candidate for us might be a multi-unit franchisee in another system who wants to diversify, either because they're maxed out on whatever territory they may have in that concept.
Right.
They built teams, and they want to give growth opportunities to their team members, and so they're looking to kind of spread the portfolio a little bit. So that would be appealing to us. But then the third piece is the fit. The chemistry. You mentioned family.
Right.
So there has to be that fit as well. So I think that putting them in those three buckets, that would be our key drivers of what defines our preferred candidate. Yeah,
I think that's really important. And what about how's the training work then, Tom? Like for your new franchisees, I mean, they come down to headquarters? Is that how it works? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So yes, they will undergo a 4-week training session, and that will occur at headquarters, which currently is the Shreveport base.
Right.
And that would be a combination of classroom and then on-site in restaurants up there. And then prior to their opening and in conjunction with their opening, we'll be on-site for 5 days to assist with that. That will overlap the pre and the initial couple of days of opening. And then ongoing, there's availability for them to then either at their request, or if we determine that we think that they need additional training, then we can go in and do so on a per diem basis for them.
Right. That's really important. What about, is there such a thing like as a typical day for a Southern Classic Chicken franchisee, Tom? I guess it depends on if they're, single unit, multi-unit, but it sounds like you also mentioned too that your franchisees will be very involved in the community as well. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very hands-on undertaking for the franchisee. Obviously, if it's a person who he's his own capital source and he's also going to run everything operationally, then it's absolutely going to be a full-time job. It's going to be a very hands-on endeavor. We do like the community involvement. As we kind of flesh out the program and start experiencing franchisees in new markets, we'll identify with their assistance, of course, what charities we want to be involved with, what outreach that we'd like to see in the community. But that's going to be a big piece of it, because not only is it the right thing to do as a good corporate citizen, it's also brand building. You're building awareness.
Yes. Right.
And it's just the right. It's just the right thing to do. They have a long history of doing it themselves, and I think that you look around at most systems that kind of emphasize that. That only comes back in spades.
Sure.
But it is going to be. It's going to take now. If we have a person who is to the point where they have teams and they won't be the actual person, hands-on, boots on the ground, we'll obviously have to prove their designated operating partner. And once that's done, then that person would, of course, take on, the hands-on work, because, like as I mentioned at the outset, with the Fannings, I mean, they're in their stores every day.
Right. That's amazing. And you have so much experience, Tom. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time now. From everything you've learned up to this point, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Because you know that there's so much out there today. I think they say there's something like 3,000 or 3,500 different systems when it comes to franchising. So there's so much to choose from. So, I mean, from everything you've learned up to this point, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise?
Well, certainly seek out some assistance, whether it would be from a legal perspective, accounting perspective, financial.
Yeah.
If you're not sure about or maybe you're intimidated a little bit by the process, because I think a lot of people underestimate really how regulated and legally intensive the franchise world is.
Agreed.
At the end of the day, irrespective of the underlying concept, it's a regulated contract, and it's a multi-decade agreement. If it goes right, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, are going to be invested in flow. And so it is a real serious undertaking. And then, of course, get that FDD from the franchisor and hire someone who really understands, it's a prospectus, basically. And we get someone really to understand it if you don't, and walk you through it. Because, at the end of the day, you do have options, but you want to find that system that has, in my view, they've got the operating experience and history of not just selling franchise, but opening franchise locations, opening profitable franchise locations.
Right. Yeah.
And, to me, one of the big points of validation is talk to as many of that system's franchisees, and I'd ask them just one question. And the one question would be, would you do it again?
Powerful question.
If they tell me and if they tell me yes, then I know that franchisor is doing something right.
Yeah, that's a powerful question. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And it sounds like, I mean, it's really an exciting part of the history right now for Southern Classic Chicken, Tom. Where do you see the organization, if you could look into a crystal ball, maybe 3 years, 5 years down the road, where do you see Southern Classic Chicken?
I'd like to say that it's a name that is going to be known in many more markets than it currently is. Yeah. We've purposely avoided putting a number of units that we'd like to see, out there in the 3 to 5. Yeah. But our initial focus is Southeast United States. So I call it inside out growth. So we're starting Shreveport. We'll do a 300-mile bubble, call it, and then we're just going to keep growing that bubble. But there's plenty of runway in the Southeast without question. So I'd like us to have emerged as a significant, if not dominant, regional player in the fried chicken space.
That's fantastic. Do you see at some point, again, it's I know way down the road, Tom, but I mean, do you see like international or global, is that, a part of, the plan as well, or that's well into the future?
It is. I think, to me, it's still baby steps. Let's keep, keep it confined for the moment in a good way. Geographically, I think that's a common mistake that fledgling franchisors make, and that is that they get tempted to sign a big deal in a market that hundreds if not thousands of miles away from them, and then they have trouble supporting it, and there's no brand recognition, and so it's tempting, but in time,
I think that's a great response, Tom. And what's the best way, Tom, for our listeners to get more information on Southern Classic Chicken? Of course, it's the product, but even more so the franchise opportunity. Are there any websites you can kind of direct them to?
Sure. You can go to the SouthernClassicChicken.com, the website. It has a link to franchising tab, and you'll see there you can fill out the initial request for information, send it in, and then we'll process from there.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you today, Tom, and I'd really like to invite you back over the next year or two as you continue to grow, because I think this is an exciting time for Southern Classic Chicken.
Well, thanks, Marty. Again, appreciate it, and I'm glad to anytime.
This has been my pleasure, Tom. And we'll be right back with more franchise interviews. Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every franchipreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, we've been hosting Franchise Interviews many years now, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on the show. Today you're going to get to hear a quote from Peter Baldine, and Peter was a guest that we had on the show many years ago, and it's interesting because you can kind of go back 13, 14 years ago to our earliest podcast and still learn some great lessons. Peter is the Chief Development Officer for Moran Industries, and Peter, on this particular podcast, discusses some of the several advantages of franchising compared to non-franchise businesses, things like support, guidance, and instantaneous relationships. So here we go with Peter Baldine of Moran Industries.
You know, franchising is all about systems. It's about, business systems that work, okay? And it's not always as all that specific to the widget that you're selling as it is to the systems that you provide the franchisee in order to run their business successfully, okay? Right. And Moran Industries has the infrastructure in place with all the various support systems that a franchisee really needs to be effective in how they run their business. Keep in mind that a new franchisee coming into, owning their first business is not used to having to be the person with all the answers in several different areas of the business world, So someone who opens up an independent business has to be the HR person, the operations person, the marketing person, the financial person, all those different aspects have to be covered and all those different decisions have to be made. And with a system like Moran Industries, one of the great things is that our franchisees don't really have to be the experts in all those areas. They can pick up the phone any day of the week and they can call, the marketing department, or the operations department, or the accounting department and get support and answers for the decisions that they have to make on a daily basis. So that infrastructure, is critical to the success of new franchisees who haven't owned their own business before.
Yeah, you're right.
And it starts all the way back in the beginning. When they first sign those agreements with all the help that we give them in the startup phase. You have two different aspects of it. You've got the startup support where we're helping them with, site selection and lease negotiation and equipment purchases and all those types of things. And then you move into a different area of development once they open their doors with the ongoing, support that they receive.
fantastic. You wrote that great article, Peter. It was called "Gaining an Edge with Vendor-Supplier Relations." I saved that one in my archives. It sounds like Moran Industries has strong relationships with their vendor partners, which is fantastic for your new franchisees and your current franchisees, just working with you guys. Did you want to talk a little bit about that and why it's important?
Sure. I appreciate you mentioning that article. Didn't know that you had read it, but I actually, when that article was published, I got a lot of phone calls, from people in the industry about that article.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of a fun article to write because it's something that that I guess you have to be as old as me to understand those experiences,
Right.
but those vendor relationships are very important. My mentor, back years ago, I remember having dinner with him one night, and one of the things that he asked me a question. I said, "Geez, I'm not sure," and he said, what the answer to that is, and he said, "Well, you have to look at, in running a franchise company, you have to look at what all your available resources are to help your franchisees." And he asked me to define what my resources were. And I didn't define it real well at that time when I was a young kid,
Right.
But what I learned through that discussion early on was that you have a lot of different resources that, available to you that you don't always look at, you don't always recognize, and you don't always use properly. And the relationships with your vendors can be tremendous resources in helping your franchisees. We don't sell product to our franchisees. We're not in the product business. We used to be in the product business, and we decided that for our business, at least, some people do that well, but for our business, we decided that it was a distraction, and what we really needed to focus our energy on was our core business, which was being a good franchisor. So we went back at that time and began really establishing strong vendor relationships, negotiating well on behalf of our franchisees to give them the savings so that their cost of goods would be lower than their competitors. Found in the process that, we had many vendors who were willing to do other things for us, who were willing to share ideas with us on advertising and marketing support. For example, we've got a couple of vendors who have very strong marketing departments, and they work closely with our marketing department to help put together ad campaigns for our franchisees. So, the vendor relationship can be much more than just buying product, So our role with our vendors is to negotiate both, purchases and services on behalf of our franchisees to give them the best deal possible out there.
Absolutely. And the franchisees appreciate that, which I guess, you have a stronger relationship between the franchisee and franchisor.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.